And welcome to Big Benjamin's Fight for Freedom. This is the first episode, so I expect a lot of mess-ups. Well, firstly, the show is going to talk about England. I thought I'd start the show by talking about my home country, talking about what's going on, what's the reality, and where the lack of common sense is. Now, firstly, I want to tell everybody that firstly I am a nationalist. I'm not a racist fascist. Nationalist is something that means simply someone who just loves their country. I love England. I love Britain. I love the fact that we are a very free and open society. Mostly we're very diverse. We've got all cultures here. Everybody seems to band together pretty well. Of course there are a few problems, but we're a country full of about 60 million people. You're going to get that. You're always going to get certain troubles. We're not perfect. I'm also not ignorant of our history. Things done in the name of empire. Particularly in the Irish Republic, in India, and the African countries. So it's not that I'm an ignorant moron or anything like that. I'm quite, I'm quite aware of what we did, in the empire. But I look at England as it is today. And I look at Britain as it is today, and it's a very, very modern, a very democratic country, and we should be proud of that. We should be proud that every culture has influenced us in some way, that every culture is here, and that is the point I want to make on this programme about England. So, like I said, there's going to be a lot of mess-ups in this show, I imagine, so you may not agree with everything I say. You'll have every right to disagree. I believe in freedom of speech, so once the show's over and you see this on whatever platform you see it on, feel free to voice your opinions. And I think that's the first thing I'm going to talk about, the freedom of speech that we've got. It's a wonderful thing, because it's a thing that we've exported as well. Many countries have adopted the British form of government, so like the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and they're generally equally as open communities as we are here. Again, they have problems. Every country, I'm not saying England or Britain is perfect as a whole. You're going to get certain problems, but you have to accept that compared to, say, an isolationist state like North Korea, we have a much better system than that. It's much more preferable. The thing that people are probably worried about is the language that I've used so far, which was nationalist. Now, nationalist is a word that is bandied about quite incorrectly, I'm afraid. People think, oh, he's a nationalist, he's a white supremacist. They dub it in the wrong key. It's absolute nonsense. I'm not a fascist or a bigot. I'm glad that everybody's here. I celebrate diversity. I celebrate secularism. I'm a religious man myself, but I have no problem with other religions here, or people that don't have religion. In fact, Martin Luther King, the most important thing he said of all is that you judge people on the content of their character. And that is being a whole. So the nationalist tag is something that I'm proud of, and I'm not doing it to belittle anybody else. I'm doing it because I just love my country. I'm just proud of it. It's got things to work on. Every country has its social issues, it has its social problems. It has, our NHS is incredibly run down at the minute. We have problems with drinking, obesity, things like that. Every country has some sort of problem. In the United States, they have a problem with guns. We don't have that here. We have, because guns are illegal to own, and you can't own a gun here. I suppose there are good shooting clubs, but that's about as far as we go here. So gun crime is incredibly low. Knife crime is sadly a little bit higher, but can you ban all knives? I don't know. I don't think you can really ban all knives. It's a difficult thing. I suppose anything can be turned into a weapon if the people want to make it a weapon. But talking about England, nationalism, there's nothing wrong with being an English nationalist. It doesn't mean you're a far-right Nazi that wants to gas and subject other people to your will. I do think, though, however, will is the British rule of law should be accepted for those that live here. You live in Britain, you follow the British law. You live in France, you French law. There should never be anything to counter that. That's one thing I would say. That would probably be the most right-wing thing I'd say, but I think it's just common sense. Law of the land is law of the land. And another thing on nationalism, every time Raheem Sterling or Dele Alli, who are two English footballers, soccer players for those of you watching from the US, every time they put on the England shirt, that's nationalism to me. They're just proud to wear the shirt. You see, skin colour is irrelevant to me. Ethnicity is irrelevant. Religion is irrelevant to me. Everybody has contributed to this country and made it better. Now, there are things that we do have to tackle, and sometimes we don't want to talk about them, and that makes it ultimately wrong. So this first show, it's just gonna be me, unfortunately. I will have co-hosts, and we will have a grander scale of the show at the moment. It's just nice to do this show outside, actually. It's been a very mild autumn in this country, or fall as you would call it in the North America. It's been actually quite a nice autumn. Usually it's a lot rainier, a lot foggier, a lot stormier. We have had storms, but it's just nice that I can still sit out in my garden and do this show. England's very lucky for weather. We don't have earthquakes and things as such on the grand scale that you do in America. I mean, San Francisco gets them terribly, I know. So this is what the show's about, just meeting me a bit and what I'm about. I'd like to think I'm about common sense more than anything. I understand that you need all media, whether it be mainstream or alternative, and understand that everybody's got a narrative. Even myself, I'll have some form of, even if I'm not knowingly doing it or saying it, my narrative will come out in some formats, but I just like to think my narrative is common sense. Let's not descend into anything strange here. I'm going to talk about in a bit a statue issue that was raised in England recently. I'll talk about that after the break, but largely just want to I won't reflect too much more on the nationalism thing, because I think I've explained myself well enough now. I'm not a white supremacist. I have no problem with any other culture, and I welcome other cultures. I'm not anti-immigration, I'm not anti-anything really, other than things that want to harm and destroy this country, which you've got to be against. There's nothing wrong with having security, and there's nothing wrong with protecting the freedoms we hold dear. So that's really the first part of Big Benjamin's fight for freedom, what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the flag, because that's always been a bit of an issue as well in this country. It's always been, I suppose it's been adopted by the wrong people, and I'm claiming it back for the right people. So that's another mission that I've got in this video. Just welcome to the show. Now, talking about England and the UK is something that I'm quite enjoying, actually. I've done a bit of research on things. I'm going to be talking, like I've already mentioned, there's a statue issue that I'm going to be talking about, but I'm also going to be talking about, and the flag, but there's also other things that are just creeping in that I think we need to talk about. I'm going to be talking about the media. I'm going to be talking about the future direction. Brexit will, without doubt be talked about, and I will see you after the short break. Welcome back to Big Benjamin's Fight for Freedom. Welcome to part 2. In part 2 we're going to talk about the Nelson's Column statue issue, and we're also going to talk about the flag issue. So firstly, I was watching Channel 4 News, Sky Television, and Sky Television, and found that there was a lady called Afua Hirsch who was basically making an appeal to take down the Nelson's Column statue in London, claiming that he, in modern terms, would be known as a white supremacist. Now, I just have a slight disagreement with her. I think he was maybe a man of his time, and he probably wasn't the most, well, the biggest supporter of ethnic diversity, I imagine, but, you know, the lessons that you get from Nelson is he was about bravery, you know, that's what you get from Nelson. What I'm really bringing up here, though, is the fact that this taking down of statues, which seems to be an issue all across the world now, you've got, you know, in America you've got like Confederate statues being wanted to pull down. Now, talking about Afua Hirsch herself, she's half Ghanaian, she's mixed race. I have no real animosity towards her. I don't have a problem with her. I think her point of view is not the worst. You know what I mean? She could fire back at me as like, well, why would you want to keep this statue? You're not mixed race. You don't understand why I want this down. I think the counter argument I have outweighs hers. Though I think my worry is if you start taking down statues, you start a domino effect that could lead to some very dark places. So, for example, you also have to remember as well that the removing of statues and destroying statues is a tactic that ISIS use. They do this in Iraq with the old Babylonian architecture and stuff like that, because it doesn't fit their narrative. Now, I'm against removing statues just because they don't fit your political narrative. I think you have to, you know. It's like I said, Nelson was probably a man of his time. I agree with it. He probably wasn't the biggest fan of ethnic diversity. But, you know, England has gone through such a change that we are now a culture where we are ethnically quite diverse. Okay, demographically, probably 90% people are white, but, you know, if you go in a city centre anywhere, you get a mix of everybody. So, you know, I just don't agree with her argument. You know, this is the thing I promote most of all: the right to disagree. I mentioned just a few moments back, Leon at mixed race. How would you understand that this is offensive? She's right on that. I'm a white man. I could, you know, I don't understand what it's like to mix race. I don't understand what it's like to have, you know, she maybe grew up, you know, experiencing some degree of racism. You know, Britain does have structural issues with racism as well. I mean, the top jobs are taken by mostly probably white males. You know, it is changing slowly, but it's not been a quick one. So she's maybe got some point on that. But the domino effect that I was talking about, that's the thing that I worry about most, because it starts with statues, doesn't it? And then it develops into other things. Well, this museum doesn't fit my political narrative. This has to go. And at the most extreme part of this is when someone in Poland goes, well, I don't like this Auschwitz museum. This doesn't fit my narrative. Once that museum is gone, it is absolutely detrimental to society. Now, I know this is a bit of a doomsday scenario that I'm talking about here. This is, you know, it's shocking. It is. But, you know, it starts with one thing and then it can lead to another. And, you know, with removing things like this, we just become more ignorant, I think. We become like, you know, again, the Auschwitz Museum, it's not nice, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be a reminder of this is what humanity can be at its absolute worst. And I know it was an extreme case I gave there, but even something as simple as Nelson's statue going, it's just bad for society in general, I think. Remember Lord Nelson, remember what his real message was about bravery. Okay, he was a white guy and he probably wasn't the biggest fan of ethnic diversity. Churchill hated socialism, but, you know, he's lauded as a hero. by socialists, by some socialists, you know. Oh, this man saved Britain. There's maybe a fair point to that. So that's what I'm going to say on this. Like I said, there's no personal animosity between me and Afua Hirsch. I think she's a nice woman. I think she's, you know, she means well. You know, I don't think there's anything. She has a right to opinion as well. This is the thing. People have a right to disagree with me. Someone, you know, and I don't have all the answers, but I think this is something that I just disagree on the grounds that I think it could lead to something a bit worse. And you know, let's don't tear down statues. Let's have them as a reminder, even if it's something that's not, even if it's a touchy subject matter. Let's keep these things up there. You know, let's keep these things as a reminder. Like, this is how far we've come. Let's not go back this way. And that's my subject on the statue issue. Now, the flag issue, this is something I want to bring up today. This is a personal campaign I'm making. I want to turn this flag here, so this flag here is the St George Cross, the flag of England. I want to reclaim that for democratic people like myself. I want to reclaim it for the right people. I want this because this flag was hijacked by groups like the National Front and fascist organisations. This flag doesn't belong to them. They're not representative of what England and Britain is, and I am reclaiming it for the sensible people who are not racist, not homophobic, not fascist. They believe in secularism. The true working people of England, that are the lifeblood of this country. We want this flag back. We don't want this flag to be demonised anymore. It was hijacked by the wrong people. Now, some people see that flag as the flag of the Crusades, and obviously, ooh, keep this flag away from me. But you can't really ban a flag because of your own, for your own narrative. And I'll give you a perfect example now. I've got a prop of me, and I'm full of flags today. This flag, for those not in the know, it is the flag of the Republic of Croatia. Now, let me give you a prime example of how a flag can be divided. To the Croatians, this is a flag of national identity, freedom, independence. You know, their independence was fought for. It's about the modern Croatia as it is today. You know, they have you know, increasing tourism. They're seen as quite a westernised Slavic nation. To be fair, they on the Adriatic Sea across from Italy. The view of this flag is slightly different if you cross the border. If you go to Serbia, this flag is seen as essentially no different to a swastika. Down to the fact that they look at this flag and all they see is the Ustaša, which was basically the Croatian Nazi puppet regime, really. They were a group of people who murdered ethnic Serbians, even other Croatians as well, and communists, anyone that was basically anti-fascist or they just didn't like. So flags can be divisive, but you can't ban them. And this flag of England gets completely ridiculed, but you've got to remember what it's like. I said earlier in the video, England these days is a very, very progressive country. And we're still told to, you know, there is a bit of a self-loathing thing going on, and it does start with the flag, you know. I don't understand why we are so self-loathing, you know. Yes, we have, like I said, I'm not being ignorant, I'm well aware of what we did with the Empire. I'm well aware that we've been you know, our forces have been very brutal to other cultures. But we've got past it, you know. We're not an imperial power anymore. We have a few overseas territories and, you know, things like that, but largely we're just a modern democracy. Yes, we have issues, like I said, we're not perfect, but in general we're far ahead of many others. And so the point with the flag I'm making is, let's reclaim it for the sensible people. That is the flag of England. I'm proud of that flag. I'm not a racist, I'm not a bigot. It's just the flag of my country, no different than the tricolour is the flag of France, or, you know, this is the flag of Croatia, or I just look at it no differently to that. And we will be back after the break. Welcome to the final part of Big Benjamin's Fight for Freedom, my new show. Of course we're going to get bigger and better. The third part, I'm just going to analyse the things we discussed, talk about a few future things like that. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about now is the statue thing that I talked about. So again, when I used Auschwitz as an example, so I basically said that it could create a domino effect. So one day it's statues, next day it's museums, and then other monuments, things like that. That's my worry. I am right in the sense that ISIS do use these tactics. I think really what I'm getting at is even if the statue doesn't paint your country in a favourable light, or it's about a touchy subject or something that, there's a statue of Genghis Khan or someone that did some very evil things, I still think if you take it down, it still makes mankind worse off, because people maybe not aware of that person, what that person did. As far as Nelson, like I said, he was a man of his time probably, but the message you get from him is not about race really. It was about bravery. So I think like I say, that on that one I think I'm right. I think it could lead to one thing, one thing could lead to another. And though I used Auschwitz, I think Auschwitz is the most extreme point, but one can lead to another. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully all statues can stay up, and we talk about them without bias. I think that's the thing. We've got to say, look, this was a guy, man of his time, but he was brave. Look at the good things in him. Take that from it. Learn from the bad. So that's that one. The other one was the English flag. Again, my points are true that it was hijacked by the far right groups, but we need to make sure that the national flag of England is not tied to those sorts of people. It's got to be tied to, rational, democratic, free-thinking people like the majority of people in the country, really. Let's have it back. So that's what I was talking about there. The other thing I've talked about today is just our free and open society. Let's keep that. That's important. I talked a bit about England being self-loathing. We are a bit, really. We should be proud. We've got a decent country, a decent standard of living. We are diverse to a degree. You know what I mean? Like I said before, demographically, I suppose most people are white and of European origin, but there's still enough, people from other cultures and continents here that mix in well. So I think we've got a good balance of that. I do think that we do need to promote our own culture a little more. Things like St George's Day are always demonised, really. I think we should be proud of that. I've always said that with these things, you've got to be, like at St George's Day, a Caribbean carnival and all sorts of things. Let's have it all. They share their culture, we can share ours. I think there's nothing wrong in that overall. I think that's good. That's a positive thing. I love it when Indians have the Diwali thing. So let's keep all that. Let's celebrate diversity without demonising our own culture. I think it's perfectly viable to do that. The thing I was going to touch on, and I'm going to touch on in a small way, is Brexit. That was the other thing that I did mention just before the break. I think with Brexit, I can't really cram it all really into 5 minutes, but just to get a few points out, it's like whichever way you voted, I think what we need to do is, there's enough people moaning about the result, but it's happened now. You've got to just move on, and let's move on together. Let's unite again now. Let's come up with ways to make Britain still a country that's a beacon of light in the world. Brexit was seen as a dark thing. For me, not personally. I think the EU has its own problems. I think it was maybe good that we've got ourselves to rely on now. I think I'm worried about what deal they're going to get. I don't know whether we've elected the right people to deal with it. time will tell. But I think overall we've got, we just got to move forward. The decision's been made. Like I say, I agreed with it on a whole, but it was nothing to do with immigration. Why I agreed with it, I just looked at the EU as an organisation and a body and felt, you know what, this is not the most democratic or great thing for England. But I think that for every other country as well. Like, it's not just the UK that I felt that. I think they have. See, some countries see it as a security, I guess. So that's why you've got a lot of the smaller countries joining it still. So, time will tell what will happen to the UK and the EU. But I think irregardless of which decision you made, let's unite, move on, think of ways to keep the tourism coming to the country, keep the money coming in, and again, let's become the exporters we once were. Let's get a bit of that back. Why don't we used to make all sorts of things. Let's return to that. Let's export arts and crafts and all sorts of things, food and even infrastructure, even buildings and things like that. Let's export stuff. We're good at that when we want to be. Let's make advances in technology. Let's become, I suppose, in a way, the Japan of the West. Japan, who has all this wonderful technology, because why can't we, raise a challenge to them? Say, but look, we've got this. Because the Japanese are very great with technology. Come on, UK, let's get on it. Let's go down that market as well. Let's just, let's become a nation that exports. Let's encourage thinking, encourage creativity. Let's be that again. Because you look at how much profit the country and its allies made from the railway industry, which was largely championed by us. Let's get back on that. In the Industrial Revolution, things like that. Britain really plummeted. Let's have a little bit more of that. Obviously, without the colonialism and the things we did to natives in other countries. Let's just do it for ourselves now. Let's, again, if you've got more commerce and money in the country, you can cure a lot of the social problems. So things like, unfortunately, we have still a large chunk of homelessness in Britain. We still have things that have to be dealt with. I've glorified this country, quite rightfully so, but we do have social issues like any other. We need a way to deal with that. And I think if you can deal that by bringing just down to the basics. Money pays for things. So if you can pay for somebody a homeless person to have accommodation, get them back on their feet, let's do that. Let's help the people at the very bottom. Let's help people that have got drug problems, drink problems. You can say these things are self-inflicted, but they still, if you can cure them, let's cure them and let's get people reintegrated into doing better things. So I think my point's just on that. So that's my message to those that voted Remain. Okay, the result wasn't what you wanted, but just there's not much you can really do about it now. I know there's reports all the time about a second referendum. You can't ignore 17.5 million people, though. It's just nonsense. So I think you just... what I would say on that is just move on and think of ways, okay, well, this decision's been made. I didn't want it, fair enough, move on. I can either carry on complaining about it or I can spearhead a new movement which makes, like I said, the aforementioned, let's become a creative, exporting technology, a technological, Britain again. Let's focus on these things and benefit again. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching Big Benjamin's Fight for Freedom. This was the first show. Again, we'll be back soon, and it'll be a bit better production. I can assure you that, and a bit better organised, and there's going to be more than just me on, so you don't have to hear me rabbit on and struggle half the time. I probably do that funny thing where I move a lot as well when I'm filming like that and silly things like that. So you know, you'll have less of that to worry in the next episode. But just want to thank you all for watching. I'll be back soon, and until then, may common sense prevail. Big Benjamin, fight for freedom. Goodbye.